Everybody, obviously apologies for being in this room, it's not ideal, but because there's the election tomorrow we didn't have any choice. Right, because I know I normally do a brief introduction and we introduce ourselves, we're just going to go straight in today with the apologies.
Councillor Holdsworth.
And Mary.
And Mary Severin.
Okay. And we've got the minutes. Are there any alterations to the minutes from the last meeting? Is everybody happy with them? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And does anyone need to declare an interest? Okay. Are there any applications to be withdrawn?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, first application then we have is the Suttons Business Park, which we actually went, or 5 of us went on a site visit on Friday. We've got the officer, Graham Vaughan, is going to be taking this one. The recommendation is to approve it, and it's in front of us today because it's a major application. Thank you.
So the application is at Suttons Business Park in Early and is for demolition of units 68 and 69 with the erection of 3 buildings for a B2/B8 use. Also proposed is the refurbishment of units 27 and 28, which are in a B8 use. The site is within the settlement of Early, but close to the borough boundary with Reading. Suttons Business Park extends primarily to the west along the rail line and is designated as a core employment area in the development plan. The units subject to this application are at the edge of the park, and units 68 and 69 are visible along the A4, which is a designated green route. The top half of the site comprises of a new unit to the north-east, parallel to Shepherd's House Lane, as well as the refurbishment of units 27 and 28. The physical parameters of units 27 and 28 would be largely unchanged except for the removal of a 2-storey block on the rear elevation. The bottom half of the site on the opposite side of Suttons Park Avenue comprises the removal of units 68 and 69 and a replacement with 2 buildings for B2 and B8 use. The access into these areas will not be altered and the planting line along the A4 will also remain. The application site is within a core employment area where B-use floor space is encouraged. The provision of 4 units and the refurbishment of units 27 and 28 will lead to an increase in the amount of B-use floor space within the application site, and therefore this is in accordance with local policy. It's also noted that marketing of the units has taken place and this has not resulted in realistic interest. Given that the units have been vacant for 18 months or more, the redevelopment of the site gives an opportunity to provide employment. Buildings are at the edge of the business park and therefore more prominent in public views, as well as being important in encouraging occupiers into the park. The boundaries contain a large number of trees and are important in ensuring that the buildings integrate into the area. It's acknowledged that the buildings are larger and of more modern appearance, but they would still reflect the commercial nature of the park and are not considered to be out of keeping with the character of the area. The separation distances between the buildings to residential properties are considered sufficient to prevent any harm on amenity and planning terms. The closest building to the residential properties is Unit 4, which is 25 metres from 50 to 54 Shepherd's House Lane. Alterations to Unit 4 have been made to ensure no doors or windows are in the elevation facing the properties, and therefore no noise spill would occur from this. Also, the external lighting is designed to prevent light spill to these properties. The access remains onto Suttons Park Avenue, and an additional condition is stated in the members' update requiring visibility space to be kept clear. 188 parking spaces are provided across the site, and this is considered to be acceptable. This will generally be split to provide spaces for each building, however management of this will be carried out by the owners of the park. There is betterment across the site in terms of landscaping, as although some trees are removed, these are primarily at the back and more trees are planted to maintain the line, particularly along the A4. All other matters are considered acceptable and secured through conditions. In the members' update, the main points are, for clarification, the application relates to units 27, 28, 68 and 69. In the report I've referenced unit 21, which should be disregarded. Paragraph 20 on page 23 should be replaced, stating that the LPA is aware of an application for retail on the site of Unit 21 and survey work has been completed regarding cumulative impact of development. However, this would need to be assessed in any future application. The current application is acceptable in terms of traffic generation. As stated, condition 21 is inserted regarding visibility space. A further survey has been submitted regarding bats, and the ecology officer is satisfied that no harmful impact would occur. There are references to the height of buildings, separation distances, and floor space of the existing and proposed units. Also included is information on levels of employment. Typically, this is looked at through employment densities, which is the number of workers per square metre for different use types. Although the employment density of the site would decrease, this is because a B1 use is far higher than a B2 or B80 use. As can be seen in the table in the update, the actual number of employees last on the site was far less than the employment density, and in any case, it assumes that the buildings are totally dead. Following this, the application is considered acceptable, subject to the conditions as outlined in the report and the update, and therefore is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, members, questions? Rochelle.
Reversing sensors. If it's going to be a 24-hour business in any of these warehousing units, can we make sure that the reversing sensors are either turned off or the silent ones that go rather than beep, beep, beep? At 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not sure I really want to hear that going on. And most people who live there in Shepherd's House Lane would not like it either.
Thank you. Chris or Claire would like to okay.
I mean, the main unit is Unit 4 in terms of impact on residential, which is that one on the top. We essentially looked at it, and the kind of main part of the deliveries is going to be essentially in front of the building, i.e. between Unit 27, 28 and Unit 4. So you would get a lot of shielding from the building in terms of the properties. I did go back to environmental health specifically and said, are you concerned about the impact of noise on residential properties? And they said they weren't. So on balance, we feel that it's acceptable. However, if you wanted a condition, then certainly we could look at that, maybe delegate that to the head of development management.
Possibly informative that if they do decide to go 24-hour service, that they would consider the residents as well. Would that be possible? We did that for Winnish, for the people who started a new area there. That was going to be 24 hours possibly, and we asked them to have silent alarms in the evenings, that's all.
Through you, Chairman, we could, in the event that they do operate 24 hours without a condition on there restricting hours of operation, then I'm afraid we would have no control. However, I'm sure that we can come up with a suitably worded condition which required that in the event that there is a 24-hour operation of that particular unit, which is Unit 4, that we would, they would submit details of deliveries and vehicles, and in that, and then we can make sure that they are dealt with sympathetically. So I think, Chairman, on balance, we don't think it's necessary, and especially in light of what Environmental Health have said to us. However, if members feel that that's a condition that they wish us to support, to place on any future planning commission, then we can do so. If you choose then to delegate that to me in accordance, if you wanted to make a decision to approve the application, I can then have a suitably worded condition.
Or is it on the same point now?
No.
Okay. Does anybody else want to just talk on that point that Rochelle brought up? No. So no one else is thinking. Okay. We need that then. John.
Thanks, Chairman. Just one question. With regards to the parking, how many employees do we think are going to be occupied in these premises? Is this, I'm looking at the table, is this the number? So how many parking spaces will be supplied by these units?
188. 188 parking spaces.
Well, you've got 188 parking places to serve 419 people. So where are the rest of the park?
It's basically it's in accordance with the council's parking standards, so they're worked out on land use. So in terms of the land uses for B2 and B8, which is the allowance that we're looking at across these 4 units. So it's been worked out on a level that's in between those two land uses.
Are you saying that the number of employees is more intensive than we would expect then?
No, it's less. It was originally B1 use on that site, so in terms of what was there to what's going to be there now is less. But in terms of the parking that's on site, it's, in terms of employment's there, obviously there's a travel plan condition, which is set out in condition 10 or 11, I think 11. But in terms of the parking, it's in accordance with the council standards, so we couldn't seek any further than what they're already showing.
Okay, that may be the case. It still doesn't answer where people can park.
Well, I can't, other than having the council's parking standards which set out that requirement and having the travel plan, that's where the levels are.
Could we ask them to have a minibus or something to pick people up from the station?
That could be, yeah, it's part of the travel plan. That could easily be something that's looked at in terms of that may be something they have to propose to anyway.
That answers the question. I just don't want the roads packed full of cars where the trucks can't get past them.
Yeah.
Malcolm?
That was exactly the same question as I had. I noticed there's 297 existing spaces parking, and it's going down by over 100 to 188. And yet the premises are bigger and will have more staff. And I was concerned about where they were likely to be parking, exactly the same issue. But Councillor Kaiser has suggested maybe on a transport thing, if there's some sort of either a bus system or something. But I don't like the idea of them having to park on the road outside just because there isn't enough space in the allocated area.
Yeah, I think in terms of the scheme that's in front of us, that shouldn't be the case because of B1 is far, because it's office, it's far more intensive and obviously it's more dense inside the building with people, whereas B8 you tend to have large lorries and pallets and whatever they're storing or moving in there, and then you have an ancillary section which will be office or B2 general industrial, which is slightly more intensive, but neither B8 or B2 are as intensive as B1, which was the existing current use on site.
Okay, thank you. Right, Chris?
Thanks. I'd just like to make a comment. A number of questions were raised by members prior to this evening, so any member of the public who's looking at the Green Book, I must thank officers because all of those questions that were raised before have been covered in the members' update, so nothing further from me this evening too.
Members, anybody else wants to add anything? Right, well, I heard 2 points then from what members were saying. Was Rochelle about the noise of the lorries reversing. So my suggestion was we take your first suggestion, as it was.
So you'd like me to put an extra additional condition on there?
No, that was the second thing you suggested.
Oh, right.
You suggested something a bit more simpler than that.
Yes, Chairman, what we can do, I think it still needs to be dealt with by condition. What we can say is in the event of nighttime deliveries in the unit 4, then we require details to be submitted for approval in writing. So it would still be done by condition,
okay,
but it would not restrict those hours. It would just require details to be submitted.
Okay, right. And then the other one was the travel plan about the minibus. So that's going to be dealt with.
Yes, conditional.
Okay, right. So nobody else is indicating anything else. We've got a recommendation to approve it on page 12, with obviously with the conditions, and then there were the 2 changes, or 1 change to condition 13, and the insertion of 21. So now I'd look to members to have a vote on it. Would they in favour of this application? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Second application tonight then on page 45 is the Cantley Sports Centre. It's a full application. It's here tonight as it's council owned. Alex Thwaites will be the officer taking this one, and it's recommended for approval, well, obviously with the conditions.
Good evening, Chairman, good evening, committee. So this is application 161123. The site location is Cantley Sports Centre, Cantley Park, exit off Twyford Road. The proposal is for a full application for the proposed construction of 3 new tennis courts, a pavilion including the associated court lighting, fencing and access. So to begin with the site location, Cantley Park is located north of Wokingham, or in North Wokingham rather, and you can see the actual site is located directly adjacent, well, it includes the 9 existing tennis courts, which are at the last bit of the access off Twyford Road. Just to get your bearings, this is from the existing car park looking south. You can see the 2 existing tennis courts and the kickabout goal. So onto the proposal, the 3 new tennis courts there immediately adjacent to the existing courts, as well as the small pavilion directly adjacent to the access, as well as a path which links all the items together. To go into a bit more detail, there's the proposal of the pavilion, that's the elevation as well as the plan. Just to go into a bit more detail after that, the lighting strategy for the proposal. This is the Lux plan. So you can see over about 25 metres it goes directly down from about 100 lux to about 1 with quite rapidly. So just to give you a bearing of what 1 lux is, apparently 1 lux is the strength of the moon on a clear night. There was a comment from one of the neighbours about the distance apart from properties such as Deacon Close and All Saints Close. I've measured it and it's about 150 metres, 160 in some places, so it's a fast distance away from the existing properties. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions in the officer report. Just to conclude, to go into the members' update, there's a slight clarification on the proposal of the description, as well as the reason for listing, as well as also just a clarification on the proposed parking and how it links into the North Strategic Development Location, or SDL. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Malcolm, as ward councillor.
Yes. These are moved because of elsewhere in the town, and I think Cantley being a sports area, it's obviously the best place to put it. It's going to be more accessible when the new developments are completed around North Wokingham. So there's a benefit in having a sport. I think it's in the right place. The lighting you've already covered and is not going to cause a problem. I think it's going to run till 10 o'clock at night, I think, between 8 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night.
That's correct.
Obviously, right, suitable for that. Is that 7 days a week, Sunday included, and bank holidays as well?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. I don't have any objection to the location or any of the details I've seen so far in here.
Thank you.
Yes, on the lighting, the type of lighting that you're using, I know that we've just installed something in Woodley, and it's LED lighting, which gives less light pollution. Apart from the fact that this isn't going to impact on the residents, just for light pollution alone, would you be using or specifying LED lighting?
I'm not too sure, but I know it's something that we could potentially condition. It is something that we've looked at, and I think the poles are about 8 metres high, so they're actually smaller than the existing lights there. So in terms of how they will actually pollute the neighbours, we've made sure that the conditions are in place in order so when it does start to get dark, then they do go off. And we've also looked at, because the type of light they're using, I don't know off the top of my head, but the type of light they're using, the amount it dissipates in a short distance is much more acceptable than some of the other lights they've used elsewhere. So that's also why the biologist is quite happy with the application, because of the amount of distance which it dissipates into the light.
Please.
Chairman, if I may just clarify just one point on that as well. As Alex has referred, we have got a condition proposed. The condition is condition 5 on page 46. It specifically states the lux level. So what essentially, irrespective of what lights are used, the levels of illumination will not exceed that amount set out in that condition.
Thank you. Rochelle?
I was wondering the distance to the MDR and whether it's going to interfere with the proposed footpath and cycle path that's going to be on that side, unless the footpath and cycle path is moved to the Bell Farm estate, which hasn't even come to planning yet. So we have to look at what's available now, not necessarily what may be available in the future.
Could you just pull the plan back up to the left? Yeah, the intention, the current understanding for the footpath cycleway, which is going to come along Warren House Road to the corner of the junction of Wiltshire Road and Wiltshire Road, will go straight into Cantley Park at that point, which my understanding is the section that runs to the north of the existing tennis courts. Therefore, the proposed ones don't affect the alignment of that footpath at all. But in terms of the progression of the NDR project, the council's team are progressing that, and the footpath has also been designed for the Bell Foundry Lane section as well. So that section is coming, but in terms of the protection of this route going through Cantley, that hasn't been affected by this proposal.
Chris?
Sorry. And will there be access off of Warren House Road to this new course?
No, access staying exactly as it is via Twyford Road.
Thanks. Just to seek some clarification on parking. I know there is comment in the members' update, but if we've got 3 courts, 12 people going on, 12 coming off at changeover, 24 people, might be a dozen cars for a short term. Are we confident that a further 12 cars can be accommodated with the parking that's provided?
Yeah, in terms of, we had a good look. I think in terms of, that's the numbers you propose are a worst case of seeing 12 people using the courts. And obviously, well, there could be more than that actually if they're playing doubles and have a coach. But in terms of the location of the new houses around it and the footpath cycleway connections, our understanding is that by providing more hard standing is going to encourage more cars to come. There is the informal parking in the main section, and a survey that was undertaken last year indicated that even when there was available surface parking spaces, people were still parking informally wherever they felt they could get closest to a tennis court or closest to the hockey club. But we haven't had any concerns in relation to parking, but we feel the sustainable location will encourage people to walk on site.
Members, any more questions down the lines? No? Okay, we've got a clear recommendation then to approve it on page 46 with conditions. So can I have a show of hands who's in favour of approval? And that is unanimous, so thank you. On to the last application then tonight, page 61, which is the Woodley Primary School. The full application is here tonight as it's council owned. Daniel Ray will be taking us through it. Recommendation for approval with the conditions as set out on page 62.
Thank you, Chair. This is application number 161009 at Woodley Primary School in Woodley. It's an application for a temporary classroom for nursery children. The application site is within a largely residential area in Woodley. The school benefits from ample playground space with a mix of informal and formal grass areas, as well as hard standing spaces. The application proposes a temporary permission for 7 years for a mobile classroom for nursery school children. The proposed development would be to the north of the main building within a grassed area. As you can see from the amended plan, which has finally been received, the mobile classroom has been reorientated 90 degrees and moved away from the boundary and protected trees. As such, no additional agricultural conditions are now proposed. The proposed classroom would result in up to 30 additional students and 2 new staff members, bringing the total number of staff at the school to 48, with 440 students. Disabled access is proposed to the classroom, which is just a short distance away from the main building. Concern has been raised by a local resident and the town council regarding the number of parking within the site. The school currently has 45 parking spaces, as well as 3 disabled bays and new covered cycle storage. parking standards, Wokingham Borough parking standards requires 37 spaces, but they're actually providing 45 plus 3, so we're in excess of the parking standards required. Condition 5 within the report also requires an updated travel plan. With this, we're aiming to improve the pick-up drop-off arrangement that may affect the nearby residential streets, which was also a concern. This condition is the trigger to improve the existing and proposed scenario following the additional student numbers. Members' updates, we've received the revised plans as you've seen, which has removed the concern about an agricultural impact. Clarification on playground space has also been provided, limiting, the clarification on playground space has been provided, and I've set out the worst case scenario if it was all key stage 2 students, but still in excess. We've also added an additional condition for 7 years as it is for a temporary basis only. And essentially subject to the conditions in the report and the update, the application is recommended for 7-year temporary approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members? Bill?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes, obviously I'm echoing the views of the Town Council and the residents being the board member. And I'm just concerned, although you say there are parking spaces, this doesn't overcome the problem of dropping off and picking up. I mean, you've already said that there is going to be alterations made for that purpose, but do you know what those alterations are going to be?
No, the travel plan condition essentially gives us the opportunity to review the existing arrangements. The onus is very much on the school to provide the best possible scenario, and we'd encourage them to do that. There is no direct specific answer to that, but we'll review it and see what improvements can be made. Unfortunately, it's a situation in residential areas where there are schools.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is something that's going to be an ongoing concern if it isn't rectified. As we know, with most schools, there is a problem with dropping off and picking up, and we're just going to increase the problem. It would need to be looked at fairly early.
Yeah. The condition specifically outlines prior to the first occupation of that classroom, they need to submit the plan, the travel plan, so we'll be able to look at it hopefully before September.
Malcolm, then Rochelle.
My only question is, when is the work likely to be on this? Assuming it gets approval, will it be done during the summer months or whilst the school's in operation? That's just that question.
Their intention is for the new cohort to arrive in the classroom in September, so it will be done within the next couple of months. So during the summer holidays. Yeah.
Second question is during this during the construction, presumably the travel plan look at this, is there, are we sure there's no problem with the construction vehicles and volumes and where they're parking the vehicles during construction?
We actually, WBC already own the classroom, it's at another site, so it is simply lifting it, putting it on a crane, taking it over, so it's a day job, it's drop off, so it should be very straightforward.
Thank you.
Rochelle?
I know you said there's going to be a travel plan. Are there going to be any proposed parking restrictions in the area? Because once you increase more students, you're going to have more problems with parking. And since we are getting CPE eventually, it would be nice to have temporary no parking between, say, 2 and 4, no parking between 8 and 9 in some spaces, so not to disaccommodate any existing residents right now. Because living near a school, I know exactly how bad it can be, and I wouldn't want to wish that on anybody else unless they actually have to have it.
I think, as you mentioned, living by a school, you experience it. I think it's the same at pretty much every school that we have. The council's parking standards don't seek for primary schools any more than just the provision of the staff, which, right or wrong, is the standards that we have. But obviously the travel plan, and I think that's where usually the members asked to be involved, or the local members usually asked to be involved, and those kind of things, looking at parking is something we can. Because it's subject to a TRO, we can't obviously link it to the application or put it on there tonight, but as part of the traffic, as part of the travel plan, we can look at the surrounding area with the school as it progresses.
That's all I was asking, to add it to the travel plan, please.
John?
Can we just refresh my memory. I didn't go to the site visit. On the front of this school, is there parking? I believe there's parking. There's a parking space on the front of that cuts back into the front of the school. Is that correct?
I'll just follow up the aerial photo, which shows parking, small amount of parking to the south, in the south eastern corner, and to the east of and north of the main blocks of the school, which runs adjacent to Fairwater Drive, I think that is.
Okay, and there's no cutout on Fairwater Drive, is there?
No.
No, it just so it's just. I mean, the important thing is, we provide for staff parking. In a lot of cases, we're beginning to find now that staff are choosing to park outside the school because car parks get so full. Is there any way we could prevent that?
Again, that's going to come down to the management of the school, and I think through the channel plan is to encourage the staff to become by alternative modes if they're in fact available, or to provide sufficient parking for them. And I think in this instance there's 2 additional staff coming. But there was a car parking survey undertaken which indicated that there was, let me put it here, it indicated that from the 45 spaces plus the 3 disabled they have, the survey indicated that there was only 37 utilised. Therefore, there's sufficient to accommodate staff and a few visitors or maybe parents if need be.
Okay, all right.
Right, any other members wishing to speak on this application? No? Okay. So we've got the recommendation on page 62 with the conditions, plus on the members' update there's the additional one because it is a temporary building to restore the land. Can I have a show of hands, those in favour of approving this application? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much then, members.